There is a version of every woman that nobody talks about. Not the version she posts on Instagram. Not the version she brings to brunch. I'm talking about the version that shows up in the dark, at 2 a.m., when the apartment is quiet and the walls feel like they're closing in. The version that whispers a name she swore she was over. Modern culture has spent the last decade telling women they don't need anyone. And in many ways, that's true. Women are more independent, more educated, and more financially powerful than at any point in human history. But here's the question nobody is brave enough to ask on camera. What if needing someone is not weakness? What if there are specific moments in a woman's life, written into her biology, her psychology, her very survival instincts, where the need for a man becomes the most powerful force she's ever felt? Today, we are going to talk about the 3 ages when that force shows up. And if you are a man watching this, pay very close attention. This is the map. Welcome back to Hidden Side of Her, the channel where we go beneath the surface of female psychology to find what's actually driving behavior, emotion, and connection. I want to be very clear about what this video is and what it is not. This is not about weakness. This is not about dependency. And this is absolutely not about men being better than women, or women being incapable of standing alone. What this is about is the science, psychology, and honest truth behind 3 distinct life stages where women experience their deepest emotional and psychological need for masculine presence, partnership, and security. Researchers in developmental psychology, attachment theory, and even evolutionary biology have found consistent patterns across cultures and generations. There are windows, emotional windows. When a woman's internal world becomes especially oriented toward bonding, protection, and deep partnership with a man. Understanding these windows doesn't make a woman weak. It makes her human. And it makes any man who understands them extraordinarily powerful in how he loves and shows up. Let's get into it. The early 20s, ages 18 to 25. The age of beautiful confusion. She's 22 years old. She just moved into her first apartment. She has a job, a group chat full of friends, and a carefully curated aesthetic on her social media. She tells everyone, and herself, that she is fine. She is independent. She is focused. And then Friday night comes. And she is curled up in bed, rereading texts from a man who she told herself she was completely over, wondering why she feels this hollow ache that her career, her girls' trips, and her self-care routines cannot seem to fill. What is happening to her? Let's break it down from 3 angles. From a man's perspective, a woman in her early 20s often sends mixed signals. She says she wants independence, but she gravitates toward men who lead. She claims she doesn't need protection, but she's drawn powerfully to men who make her feel safe. She is simultaneously testing you and hoping you pass. She's pushing you away and watching to see if you stay. Many men read this as manipulation or instability. It is neither. What's actually happening is that she is in the middle of a developmental war between the identity society is telling her to build and the biological and emotional reality that is pulling at her from the inside. Men who understand this don't get destabilized by her contradictions. They become the anchor she didn't know she was searching for. Female psychology analysis. Psychologically, the early 20s represent what developmental theorist Erik Erikson called the identity versus role confusion stage, which for women has an extra layer of complexity in the modern world. She is forming her adult identity at the exact same time that her attachment system is becoming fully activated. Her brain's reward circuitry, particularly the oxytocin and dopamine pathways, becomes exquisitely sensitive during this period. Every touch, every text, every moment of emotional attunement hits differently in your early 20s. Here's what the research confirms: women in this age range are at peak sensitivity to what psychologists call anxious attachment activation. Their need for reassurance, consistency, and emotional responsiveness from a romantic partner is biologically heightened. Furthermore, her prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for long-term reasoning, is still developing until age 25. This means her emotional brain is running faster than her rational brain. She feels the need for connection deeply before she can logically process why. This is the age of the deepest romantic wounds, and also the deepest romantic imprinting. The men who show up correctly during this window don't just win a girlfriend, they become a psychological reference point for how she defines love for the rest of her life. Here's the real-world translation. Maya is 23. She's dating a man named David. David is emotionally consistent. When she pulls away, he doesn't panic. When she tests him with silence, he responds with calm presence, not chasing, not disappearing. He checks in without being suffocating. He leads plans without asking her permission. He creates a container of safety that her nervous system finally relaxes inside. Compare that to the guy she dated before David, who matched her energy, chased when she pulled away, and disappeared when she leaned in. That relationship created an anxious loop her brain interpreted as passion. David doesn't create the loop. He breaks it. And that is what makes her fall completely in love with him. Not the butterflies. The safety. Takeaway for men, in her early 20s, a woman doesn't need perfection. She needs consistency. She needs you to be the calmest person in the room when her emotional weather changes. That consistency will anchor her more than any romantic gesture ever could. The late 20s to mid-30s. The age of quiet urgency. If the early 20s are beautiful confusion, the late 20s and early 30s are something else entirely. This is the age of the woman who has built everything she was told to build. The career, the savings account, the passport stamps, the friendships, and wakes up one morning to a feeling she did not expect. Not emptiness exactly. More like incompleteness. She looks at her life and it is genuinely impressive. And she is genuinely proud. And she is also, underneath all of it, quietly terrified that something essential is slipping past her. From a man's vantage point, women in this age range appear to have everything together. They're confident, successful, and seem to need very little. Many men actually become intimidated by women in their late 20s and early 30s, they pull back, assuming she doesn't need them, or that the bar to enter her world is impossibly high. This is one of the great tragedies of modern dating. Because the truth, the psychological truth, is that under that polished exterior, she is more open to genuine commitment than she has ever been in her life. She's not looking for someone to complete her. She's looking for someone worthy to add to what she's built. The man who sees beneath the capable surface, who doesn't flinch from her success but matches it with his own groundedness, becomes profoundly attractive to her at this stage. Female psychology analysis. Here is what's happening inside her during this period, and it is genuinely fascinating. First, the biological reality. A woman's awareness of her reproductive timeline becomes viscerally real in her late 20s and early 30s. This is not social pressure, though that certainly exists too. It is an internal, biological urgency that researchers have documented across cultures. The brain begins flagging partnership, nesting, and long-term security with increasing neurological priority. But there's a layer far deeper than biology that most people miss. By her late 20s, a woman has typically experienced her first significant adult heartbreak. She knows what betrayal feels like. She knows the cost of giving her emotional access to the wrong person. Her attachment system has been educated by experience. This creates a psychological phenomenon I call the high selectivity paradox. She needs a man more deeply than she ever has before, but her defenses are also more sophisticated than ever before. She's not withholding vulnerability because she doesn't want love. She's withholding it because she's learned to guard something precious. This is also the age where women begin to consciously experience what psychologist David Buss's evolutionary research describes as mate value awareness. She is simultaneously evaluating her own value in the mating market and recalibrating what she needs from a partner. Security, ambition, emotional intelligence, and reliability all rise dramatically in importance during this phase. She is no longer choosing who makes her feel butterflies. She is choosing who makes her feel safe enough to be fully herself. Let's talk about Sarah. She's 31. She has a management position she worked hard for. She does Pilates 3 times a week. She has been on approximately 47 first dates in 2 years, and has felt nothing particularly remarkable about any of them. Then she meets Marcus. Marcus is not the most handsome man she's ever met. He's not the most exciting. But he does something that absolutely disarms her. On their second date, he asks her, not what she does for work, but why she chose the work she does. And then he actually listens to the answer. He remembers it the next time they meet. He asks a follow-up question 3 weeks later. He sees her. Not her resume. Her. That is what breaks the wall down in a woman at this age. Not grand gestures. Not surface-level attraction. Being truly seen by a man who is himself grounded and self-possessed is one of the most disarming experiences a woman in her 30s can have. Takeaway for men: don't be intimidated by her capability. Be interested in her inner world. Ask the question beneath the question. In her late 20s and 30s, a woman is not looking for someone to save her. She is looking for someone who is genuinely curious about who she is, and stays. The mid-40s and beyond. The age of raw honesty. This is the one nobody talks about. Because we live in a culture that has decided women over 40 should be portrayed as either completely liberated and thriving alone, or quietly fading. Neither is the whole truth. The truth is, something extraordinary happens to a woman in her mid-40s and into her early 50s. She stops pretending. Not in a harsh way. In a profound way. The psychological and hormonal transitions of this period, what we broadly call perimenopause and midlife, strip away a kind of performance she has been maintaining her entire adult life. And what's left underneath is sometimes the most honest, most vulnerable, most deeply needing version of herself she has ever been. From a man's perspective, a woman in her mid-40s and 50s can be genuinely confusing in ways that feel different from her younger years. She might become emotionally intense in ways that seem disproportionate. She may withdraw and then crave closeness in the same week. She may suddenly lose patience for things she tolerated for years. Many men in long-term relationships with women at this stage describe feeling like they're walking on eggshells, not understanding what changed, and sometimes retreating into emotional distance at the exact moment she most needs presence. That retreat is one of the most painful things a woman at this age experiences in a partnership. And it's often the fracture point where relationships that seem solid suddenly begin to crack. Female psychology analysis. Let me tell you what is actually happening neurologically and psychologically during this period. Estrogen, which for decades has been quietly supporting a woman's serotonin production, stress regulation, and emotional buffering, begins its long withdrawal. The result is not just hot flashes and disrupted sleep, though those are real. It is a fundamental shift in how her brain processes stress, connection, and emotional safety. The neural pathways that once smoothed over small emotional disturbances are now more exposed. Things that previously rolled off her now land directly. The cognitive load of managing other people's emotions, something many women have been doing instinctively for their entire lives, suddenly becomes exhausting in a way it never was before. But here is the psychological gold in this period that almost no one discusses. This is also the age of existential reckoning. Midlife for women is not just a biological event, it is a psychological audit. She is asking herself, what was this all for? What do I actually want? Who do I actually love? Research by psychologist Dan McAdams on life narrative shows that women at midlife undergo one of the most significant identity reconstructions of the entire lifespan. And in the middle of that reconstruction, she needs a witness. Not someone who fixes her. Not someone who explains her experience back to her. A man who can sit in the fire with her without flinching. Who can say, with his presence, I am not going anywhere. You are not too much. I see all of this and I am staying. That kind of witness is not just emotionally valuable. For many women in this life stage, it is genuinely life-altering. Studies on midlife relationship satisfaction consistently show that the quality of a woman's primary intimate partnership is the single strongest predictor of her psychological well-being during this transition, more than career success, friendships, or financial security. She doesn't need you to be her therapist. She needs you to be present. Consistently, patiently, deeply present. Here is the story of Patricia. She's 47. She's been married to Robert for 19 years. By any external measure, their marriage is fine. He's a good provider. He's a decent father. He doesn't do anything wrong. But Robert checks his phone when she's talking. He gives solutions when she needs acknowledgement. When she cries, which she does more now than she ever did before. He gets visibly uncomfortable, pats her arm, and changes the subject. Patricia has started imagining, for the first time in their marriage, what her life might look like without Robert. Not because she wants to leave, but because she is desperately craving something she cannot name, and the distance between what she needs and what she's receiving feels like a wound. Now, compare Patricia's marriage to that of her friend Claudia. Claudia's husband, James, does something simple but radical. When Claudia gets emotional, he turns toward her, not away. He turns off the screen. He makes eye contact. He says, "Tell me what's going on inside." He doesn't fix it. He doesn't rush it. He holds the space. Claudia describes her marriage at 48 as the most intimate it has ever been. Patricia describes hers as the loneliest she has ever felt. Same life stage. Completely different male response. Completely different emotional reality. Takeaway for men. In her 40s and beyond, a woman is not asking you to be strong for her. She is asking you to be present with her. Learn the difference between solving and witnessing. Master the skill of turning toward instead of away. That single shift can save a marriage, and can make an already good relationship become something extraordinary. So let's pull back and look at the full picture. 3 ages. 3 very different forms of need. But if you listen closely, there is one thread running through all of them. In her early 20s, she needs your consistency, your ability to be the still point in her emotional storm. In her late 20s and 30s, she needs your curiosity, your genuine interest in who she is beneath the capable exterior she has built. In her 40s and beyond, she needs your presence, your willingness to sit with her in the hard parts without retreating. Consistency. Curiosity. Presence. These are not grand romantic acts. They don't require money, looks, or perfect words. They require a kind of emotional courage that most men were never taught to develop, but that every man is capable of learning. Here's the larger psychological insight I want you to carry with you. A woman's need for a man at these ages is not a flaw in her design. It is evidence that human beings are wired for deep, enduring connection. The culture we live in profits enormously from making people believe they are complete alone, because isolated people consume more, scroll more, and search more. But the research is unambiguous. Secure intimate partnership is one of the most powerful predictors of longevity, happiness, immune function, and psychological resilience for both sexes. Understanding the specific emotional architecture of a woman at each of these life stages doesn't just make you a better partner. It makes you someone rare. Someone she will not want to let go of. Someone who, because he truly sees her, becomes the most important person in her world. That is not manipulation. That is love informed by understanding. Before I let you go, I want to ask you something, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments. Which of these 3 ages do you think is the most underestimated? The one that men are least prepared for? Is it the confusion of her early 20s? The quiet urgency of her 30s? Or the raw honesty of her midlife years? Drop your answer below and tell me. If you've witnessed one of these stages in a woman you've been close to, what did you notice? What did you miss? What did you get right? This channel exists because of conversations like that one. Because the more we understand each other, not from a place of strategy, but from a place of genuine insight, the better we become at love. If this video gave you something, a new lens, a moment of recognition, something you're going to think about tonight, please hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds and it tells the algorithm that this kind of content matters. Subscribe to Hidden Side of Her if you haven't already. Every week, we go beneath the surface, because the surface is never where the real story lives. And the next video. We're going inside something that almost no man ever sees coming, the 3 things women test you for, without ever telling you you're being tested. If you want to understand the hidden language of female behavior, you do not want to miss that one. I'll see you there.